Well, today is like most days, and that means we're working on the F12. There's still quite a bit to be done, and it's a lot of detail stuff, but we're making a lot of progress, and we're still on track to get the car done in the next month and a half. Hopefully, that's the plan. Everything is kind of coming along. We do have a few issues, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but let me give you an update to what we're doing right now. So Tim has been working on the front suspension.
Yeah, I just put some stuff on because I know you wanted to change some stuff with the other little caster arm.
Yeah, so basically we got all this stuff done. So I finished welded everything and we got it painted up. So it's all ready to get bolted up. But this spot right here had a regular heim joint which can move. And I wasn't able to get the shock exactly dead center with a pivot point, so there is a little bit of twist in there. So to eliminate that problem, we got a solid heim joint to go in there, which I'll show you what that looks like. This is a regular heim joint, so it's in a ball and it can pivot, but this is basically just a solid chunk of metal. So this will keep that lined up and won't allow it to pivot. So that's going to keep the suspension from rocking back and forth, which would basically, it would move and bind up before the shock starts to move up, and then as it decompresses, the wheel would actually twist back, or the suspension would actually twist and go back down before the shock started working. So that is not ideal at all. Especially if we add a sway bar to the car, a front sway bar, it's gonna go somewhere on the control arm. The good thing is that we painted these with Steel It, which is this polyurethane paint that actually has stainless steel in it, so it's weldable. So instead of powder coating it, which you would have to grind off the powder coat before we could weld it, with this paint, we can just paint it, we can weld on it later, add stuff to it, and then just do a little touch-up paint, and it looks really good. Yeah, it's a nice gray. It's actually what we painted the interior with also. Easy to touch up, and it looks pretty good. So that's what we're using, and that's why we're using it. But that basically solid heim joint that we have there now will keep that arm from rotating. So it'll act like a one-piece A-arm, lower control arm, but it gives us the adjustability to change the caster quickly. So we can move that lower control arm forward or backward, basically where the knuckle sits on the outside. So this can be moved forward or backward by adjusting this length. And then I have a left-hand thread and a right-hand thread on either end. So you just turn it one way and it'll get shorter, turn it the other way and it'll get longer. So when we make those changes on the fly to get the alignment set for the first time when we start driving this thing, or later on we go to different areas and we want a little more caster, a little less caster, we can adjust all that stuff really easily. If we find that we don't use it at all, then I might just make a solid link later that's not adjustable, make it a little stronger, and basically remove that solid heim that will have some load on it, so I can make something that's goes there that's a lot stronger, basically just a tube with a tube welded to it in the other direction. So it'd be like completely solid, but the shock offset is not that bad. It's about, I think about 3 millimeters, so it should work fine. And the reason that I had to offset the shock was to get the upper control arm, the A-arm, as tight as possible, but basically the shock has about quarter inch on each side, so it's really tight in there, and we still have some adjustability on top, but yeah, that was just something that we had to compromise just a little bit to make it all work correctly, to get as much angle out of the front suspension as possible and also keep all of the adjustability. So with a build like this, every single piece is custom. Every single hose and line and fitting has to be picked out. So I've been spending a lot of time doing all that and just designing every single part to work the way I want it to work and to be as simple as possible. So the line that's on the front right now, that's actually the turbo oil drain line. So it's on the bottom of each turbo and it's going downhill slightly, just enough, maybe a couple degrees. We got a T-fitting here, and then this will go down into that hole in the block right there and drain back into the bottom of the engine. That's going to eliminate any need for pumps. It's also going to allow us to run those lines somewhere that's out of the way of heat, because obviously with the exhaust system that we built, it's gonna sound great, but it is complex. This is a V12, and then we have that X collector, and it's all under the hood rather than being under the car. Since we have a hood exit exhaust system, everything is just up top. So to eliminate some of those problems as far as heat goes, instead of having the hose draining straight down and finding a way for it to go past the X pipe in the front and the turbos and all that, I was able to get that T-fitting in the middle, just low enough. It should work well, draining the oil from the turbos, because if you don't drain the oil properly from the turbos, it will actually start to back up and fill the turbos. And if the turbos get filled from oil on the top and they still have the pressure coming from the top, well, you're gonna get smoke. It's gonna be pouring out of the turbine side and possibly even the compressor side of the turbo, getting everything in the intake manifold oily, but also just burning a lot of oil. So you have just a ton of oil smoke coming out of the exhaust. You know, Tim, I'm feeling a bit scruffy. Beard's getting a bit long here.
Don't worry about it, Mike, because thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. We have the Beard and Balls bundle with the Beard Hedger and the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. First off, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Now, this isn't just a regular razor. This thing has so many different features. It just makes your grooming experience so much better.
It's got, I see that, it's got like a foil blade on it, and it's
Yes.
got two different cutters on different angles.
And it
there.
has interchangeable heads. You can have, you know,
The standard.
the standard to cut like thicker.
Bushy, you're saying my beard basically is bushy.
Yeah, more bushy. And then once you are ready to clean it up, you can go to the foil blade. The updated trimmer blade features longer, wider, and rounded teeth that cut through hair with ease. Tough on hair, yet gentle on skin. Say goodbye to those endless passes. And then there's the foil blade, crafted to transcend the boundaries of your typical trim. This foil blade is designed to leave you with a finish that's incredibly sleek and utterly bare. It glides over your skin, capturing even the finest hairs for a flawless look that's ready to impress. And check this out, it's waterproof. Plus, it's got an LED spotlight with two different tones of light, so you can easily see your hair and groom in the darkest corners. This thing delivers and performs every time.
Well, that's awesome. And I'm definitely gonna use the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra later on to take care of some other hair. But right now, I need to trim my beard, Tim.
Don't worry, I got you with the Beard Hedger as well. This thing is perfect for hedging and sculpting your hair.
That's what I need.
This thing has a titanium coated stainless steel T-blade. This trimmer means business. With 20 different length options selected effortlessly through the zoom wheel, you can achieve any look from neat stubble to full-on beard. So Mike, that's the Beard and Balls bundle with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra and the Beard Hedger.
Go to manscaped.com and use code DDE to get 20% off plus free international shipping. Get your hands on the Beard and Balls bundle today. Trust me, fellas, your balls will thank you. So on top of the engine where the turbo oil drain line is gonna go, there was this plate that bolts on. I drilled it and I welded a Dash 8 fitting to it, but it did not weld very well. So something in this material from Ferrari, it's just very porous, and the porous aluminum just tends to soak up like every single bit of dirt and oil and whatever contamination basically. And it's not abnormal. Cast aluminum does that. And sometimes you can just kind of burn that stuff out. You just add a little more heat to it and you'll see the stuff starting to work out to the surface. It'll look like there's little black specks and little pops that are coming out of it. But usually you can get past that and add a little filler rod and burn through it and then actually get a decent weld. It's never gonna be great because it's on cast, but you can still get a decent weld. But that didn't really happen. So this, I feel, is still really porous, even though I passed over it a few times trying to get all of those bubbles out. But you can see all those little black specks in there. And it's not a huge issue since it's a cap on top of the engine. So it probably won't ever leak any oil. But if it was under pressure, it definitely would leak because I can see all those little pores on it. Either way, I'm not happy with this. So I think I'm gonna make a new plate here because we can. So I will cut it out of probably some 3/16, maybe 1/4 inch aluminum. I'll measure this and see what I wanna do. I'll copy the shape and put it into Fusion 360, which is our CAD program that we use. And then we can put a piece of material in the Jekram plasma table, cut it out, I'll clean up all the edges, drill the holes out nice, and then weld another fitting to it. Does it really matter? No. Would this work fine? Yes. But like I said, I want everything on this car to be done as properly as possible. And you know, this might take me another half an hour, 45 minutes to make this right. But oh well, I'm gonna do it anyway. I gotta get the dimensions from this plate as far as the bolt holes go. So I'm gonna measure across. These are square. That one is outside of being square, but I'll have to figure that out. But first, get this in there, kind of figure out how big the hole is. It looks like it's 7.2 millimeters, and then I'll zero it. So now it's zeroed, which allows me to measure from hole to hole, but give me the hole centers. Instead of, if I didn't zero it out and I measured across, I just get the distance to the outside edges, but I want it to the middle so I can get those pinpoints of where to cut the holes. Now I will go all the way, open, and it looks like it's about 57.45 millimeters there. I'm just gonna write that down. If I had a pen. Stand by.
Is it lost?
Stand by. Okay, we've got that dimension. Measure the other one. That is 50. And then from this one, I'm going to measure across this way. And then that looks square, but just to be sure, I'll measure across this way so I can check that. 80.85. Okay, now I can draw this up in Fusion 360. I'm gonna start drawing this out. I'm just gonna start by throwing down the circles so I can tell it the dimensions later, but I'll start out with that. And our hole was 7.15 millimeters. We'll get another hole and we will keep it lined up with that one. 7.15. This hole is still in line with that one, so we will put that one there. And then we've got our last hole here that's a bit higher, but we'll just throw that one up there somewhere. It doesn't even matter, like I can literally put it a foot away from there. 7.15. All right, so now I'll just dimension these ones. That first one is a 57.45. Next one, 50. And then this one, actually I'm gonna put something here to help keep it. So I'm gonna draw a line here to keep it vertical. Tell this that it's construction geometry, which means it's not actually a line, it's just helping you line something up. So now we've got that. I'll put this here and tell it that this and this are coincident, means it's lined up. So that's on there now, that's gonna stay straight in line, and I can tell it that it's 57.1 millimeters away. 57.1. All right, so that's our general shape.
Looks
right
about
there.
right.
Yep. And then I know that this was 80.85 across, so I'm going to check that to make sure that that's correct. So right now I'm getting 80.99. I wonder if this hole is a little bit offset inside, possibly. So I'll take another measurement from here to here and check that. 57.8. Yeah, that looks right. 57 point. That's what I said, right? 57.8.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really close. So that looks all right. And the other one, honestly, was off by a very small amount. So that one was 80.88, and it's showing 80.9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a small amount. I'm not going to be worried about that because this plate could have warped. So when I welded it all together, it might have moved a little bit. It does seem like it warped up this way a little bit. Might be off slightly, but either way, 6mm bolts go in these holes. They're 7.15 millimeters wide. So there is some slight slop there. So I'm not even going to worry about this. It looks like it's really close. So now I'm just going to figure out the hole center from there to here and figure out how big this needs to be around. So that's 11mm, so basically I'm going to go with a 22mm. So draw some more circles. 22. Now I can draw some lines on them to connect it. And since this one, so these are vertical, 90 degrees, horizontal, that's easy. This one's at an angle. So I can draw a line here, but it's not gonna line up properly on the circle. So they have another tool for that. I'll just tell it that this and this are on a tangent, and that lines it up perfectly. So instead of trying to struggle and get it to drop in place, you can just tell it that those need to line up, and it does it for you. So now that I have that, I can trim away the extra parts of the circle that I do not need. Put a hole in the middle for the fitting. So we'll just draw an X here. And both of these are just for construction. And now I've got a point in the middle to where I can draw another circle, 22mm. All right, now we've got our plate. So that was it. This program is awesome, and we use it every single day when we're working on the F12 because every bracket, every single piece needs to be custom made. So without this, it would obviously take a lot longer. This would be drawing this onto a piece of paper to figure everything out, or taking this and trying to center punch it perfectly onto another piece of aluminum, then cutting it in the bandsaw, marking everything, drilling the holes, take a lot longer, and a little bit more room for error. So that's why we love the plasma table. It just makes everything so much quicker, and we can actually get it done in a day. All right, ready to cut. Now it's in Tim's hands.
Sand it down.
He's gonna sand it down a bit and get it prepped up so I can weld it. While Tim's getting that piece ready, I'll show you guys what else we've been working on, which is basically all of the plumbing, the water lines, all the oil lines, which go to the cooler, the oil lines for the turbo feeds, the brake lines, the vent lines for the radiator, even the top of the radiator. We have to add a dash 10 fitting over here for the water to actually fill. So before, with the radiator in the front, the engine had a port that connected to a tank. You'd fill that the tank up with water, and it would drain down and get into the basically into the block. That's eliminated now. We actually cut that off and welded an AN fitting so we can use all basically nice fittings instead of hoses with hose clamps. We can screw everything together. That helps in a race car. It is easier to take apart and put back together consistently, but it also eliminates the chance for a hose to pop off. A hose clamp comes a little loose, or after a while the hose starts to get smashed down and it can work its way off and pop off. And obviously in a racing situation, you do not want that. You want everything to work perfectly all the time. So the added expense and complexity is okay because it has the purpose of not failing. But let me show you what we did to make that fit. Underneath the car here, you can see that we've got the water pump right here with this plate that used to have an 1 3/4 basically piece of aluminum coming off to put a hose onto it. It also had the port right here for the water to be filled. So there was a tank up top somewhere and a hose came down and would put water right here into the water pump. Like I said, we eliminated that. So we cut this down completely, welded a -20 onto it with, I think it was 150-degree fitting to get this to turn around in the direction we want and go to the back of the car. This is for the oil cooler. So this line goes into the oil pump on the backside. And then up front here is the bottom of the oil cooler. So that line is all done and ready. This one is also done. So we have our water line that runs through there and on the cross member, and then it'll run past the transmission here and all the way to the back of the car. And right here is our secondary auxiliary water pump. So this is an electronic water pump that's gonna help with keeping that water flowing, because we've got a long run now. So we don't just have the radiator in the front, now we've got this massive radiator in the back of the car. So we wanna make sure that we have our water flow high enough speed. We also don't want it to be moving in there too fast. If you move the water too fast, if it goes from the engine to the radiator, back to the engine, cycling too fast, the radiator doesn't have a chance to work properly. So having the biggest water pump in the world doesn't necessarily mean that your car is gonna cool better. It's all a balance. It's the size of the radiator. Is it a single pass radiator where it comes in from the top and drops down to the bottom and just has one pass? Or is it a double pass? Or is it a triple pass? The radiator that we're using in this car is a double pass. It's quite thick, but not overly thick because, again, it's a balance. If you get a really, really thick radiator core, it's hard for air to pass through it. NASCAR would run something like this because they're on these tracks going 200 miles an hour basically consistently. They never slow down. They're always just kind of, 180 to 200 something miles an hour. They have a lot of air pressure that's able to push through that really thick radiator core and cool the car down. But on this car, this thing is only cooled with fans. It's not gonna get any airflow from the front. Even the intercooler here is gonna have 2 fans on the front, and I've already got a shroud, I'll show you guys that we made. But so we can't go too thick on the radiator. The fans have to pull the air, and yeah, you have to have the right amount of flow to have the radiator work efficiently. So the radiator, the amount of time the water spends in the radiator allows it to cool off enough, but also not too long for the water that's in the engine to get really hot. So it's a balance, and having that electric pump will really help because we can control it with the ECU. We can turn it on and off to get it to work ideally if we need to. I've run that same water pump in all of my pro cars and a bunch of other cars. It works really well. It moves a lot of water, but it doesn't flow overly fast, I guess you would say. Then back over to the front of the engine under the car. So this was obviously the other port for the water. So the water pump here, this is water going into the engine. This is the water coming out that's gonna go to the radiator. That hose is actually done. It's just not installed at the moment, but yeah, I made this hose, got the fittings on there, and you guys can see on the table, we've got quite a few things going on. We've got like a fuel block Y here, the radium fuel filter. We have a fuel pressure regulator over there. And then this guy is our water tank. So another radium part. So we're gonna put this in the back of the car, mounted above the radiator. So this fitting right here is gonna feed the top of the radiator, and that's where the water is going to come in from the cap, pour it in, and it'll fill the radiator and fill the engine from that point. Right, Tim? Yes, indeed. So that's the way I had my pro cars run. That radium tank, it looks really small, but it works really, really well. It's actually got like a swirl pot in here to a little breather line, and it circulates the water to get the air out of the system before it drops down here and goes back into the radiator. And it's got a little sight on the side so you can see the coolant level from right there. Good stuff.
Solid piece.
All right, what do you got there, Tim?
We got the plate cleaned up mostly. I didn't do the inside yet because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we'll fit it to the fitting to make sure it's the right size. But when you lay that plate on top of the other, does it line up right?
Yeah, maybe have it backwards. Wait.
Hopefully. Wait for it.
That's it. Yes.
Looks good. All right, so we'll drill those holes out because basically when you cut it with a plasma cutter, the hole is never exactly straight. It's always tapered a little bit. And the same thing with the side cuts. Then the thicker the material is, the more of that you'll get kind of cut at an angle just because of the way the flame is on a plasma cutter. Laser cutter or water jet cutter would be nice and straight, but those are really expensive. And being that we don't work on any customer cars here, it makes no sense to get that. These plasma cutters work really, really well. We'll just pass a drill through there and drill it out to the right size, and then we'll have a perfectly straight hole. In the passenger side wheel well, we have the dry sump oil tank. So a dry sump system is, well, it's race car stuff. It keeps all of the oil in this tank rather than in the bottom of the engine. There's a few benefits for this. One is that you actually can use a lot more oil, which seems like it might be a waste, but the more oil you have, the more consistent the oil temperature is, the less temperature spike you're gonna have. So that's one benefit. But the real benefit is that all of the oil gets pumped out of the bottom of the engine through these lines here and then into the tank. And inside the tank, it's got baffles and screens and all this stuff to basically take all the air out of the system and let that clean oil with no air drop down to the bottom where it's sucked back into the engine. So it'll run a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 stage oil pump, depending on how many pickups it has on the bottom of the engine. And instead of having a really deep oil pan, you have this really flat plate. So the engine can be mounted lower in the car, which helps with the center of gravity, drops everything down. Obviously, that allowed us to have all that space up top for the massive turbos and the whole exhaust system. And then you don't have to worry about it getting air in the system. So in an oil pan, you'll have to have like windage trays, you'll have to have baffles and like trap doors and all these things so that the oil pickup that's at the bottom of the oil pan that goes into the engine, goes into the oil pump, if the oil's sloshing around and that thing sucks some air, well, it's gonna be pumping air through the bearings on the engine. And that really only happens under like really severe driving conditions. So lots of G loads, whether you're accelerating or braking or turning or going over jumps or whatever it might be, that's a time when the oil is moving around in the system and you can get air bubbles, and that's a really, really easy way to spin a bearing, a main bearing, a rod bearing, and cause some serious damage to your engine. So luckily, Ferrari already has a dry sump system, so we've been able to utilize a lot of that in this car and not have to redo everything because, well, it's kind of tried and true. These engines make a lot of power normally aspirated from the factory. It's gonna make about more than double now with our turbo system that we put on it. But I think it will still be completely capable of handling all of our oiling needs for this engine. So I don't think there's gonna be any issues there. But we did have to change some stuff around to make it all work. We've got obviously different coolers in the front. So we've got this massive set trap oil cooler in the front with dash 16 oil line fittings. Like that's gonna flow a ton of oil. And this fitting was something I've been waiting for a few weeks. It was on back order, finally got it in. But it's an Earl's fitting, and it uses a special type of hose that's really lightweight but actually really strong as well. But either way, we've got this now, and it's a 45-degree fitting that's going to go on there and allow our oil line to pass down here through the chassis, keep out of the way of the front wheels, and we'll actually even make a plate or something that goes over here to block all this off. So any debris that's coming off the tires or rocks, or worst case, if you hit that corner and knock the wheel back, it's gonna have a solid plate there that's gonna prevent the wheel from coming into the oil tank and knocking off oil lines and all that, which could cause a lot more damage than just having a broken front suspension. All right, Tim is finishing up the plate here.
Just cleaning up the burrs on the hole.
Yeah, so basically got the right size drill bit, drilled those holes out so they're nice and straight now, and then he's using this hole deburring tool, which kind of just looks like a drill bit at the end of it, but that will give you a little bit of taper on those holes and not have like a sharp edge where there's just, you know, a little bit of jagged metal coming up. But yeah, if you guys can see that, now we've got a nice clean hole, and this thing is ready to get welded up. Need a little bit more clearance to get our fitting to locate in there. It's almost there, but it has a little
like
bit.
A little step right there, or like notch.
Yeah, from basically where it started. So we got to eliminate that, but it's also tapered. So this is the bottom side, and we actually want the fitting to go on this side, but that hole is too small. So the hole is tapered up. So we got to make it square all the way through. This is probably not the exact right way to do it. If I had a step drill, that would be better in that size, but I don't. And this is really close, so I'm just gonna be careful and start.
Oh, it's working.
It's working, it's got just the right amount. All right.
That should be it, right?
That should be it. So now it's nice and square, and look at that.
Perfect.
Fitting goes on there. It's even like almost snug enough to hold the fitting in place. So perfect. We'll just use the deburring tool on there. And if you can see right now, you got like that sharp edge.
Oh, yep, I see it.
I'll just give that a spin here. Cut that sharp edge off of there. Do the same on the bottom. And that's
now
it.
it's ready to weld.
Ready to weld. All right, it's all done. It actually only took about 20 minutes to make this, prep it, drill it, and yeah, weld it up. So I like that a whole lot better. That other piece was just so contaminated. Eventually, you know, would have had some little oil coming out of it. It started making a mess on the top of the motor. This should seal up perfectly, and it looks a lot better. So that's done. Let's get back to the F12. So I told you guys a little while ago that there is an issue with the car, with the engine. That seems to be really the most difficult part about this project, is the factory Ferrari stuff. That's kind of been a challenge because there's so little information on these engines, on the cars in general, unless you have access to the dealer network. And at that point, if you have access to the dealer network, you're not supposed to share it with anyone. Ferrari does not like that. So getting information from a few people I know, little bits of information here and there, has actually helped a lot. Like the torque specs for the engine, very, very important. How tight do you torque the head bolts? How tight do you torque the sump plate? All that kind of stuff. That needs to be precise. You can't mess around with that. Also, what size bearings, because Ferrari has colors for their bearings as far as their thickness. So it'd be like a red or a green or a blue or whatever, would be different clearances. And we needed that information before we could order the bearings. When we went to the dealer, they wouldn't give us that information. They just said, we need to know what color the bearings are in your engine currently. But unfortunately, all those little marks on the side of the bearing with like a little paint pen or whatever they used to mark them, they were all gone. So we had no idea what was in here originally. So luckily the guys at D Sport know what they're doing. They were able to measure the crank, measure the block precisely, and figure out what that total clearance is and then go back through the bearing color chart that we actually got from somebody I know, and we're able to say, okay, these are the bearings that we need. This is going to provide us with the right amount of clearance. So you need some clearance for the oil to basically make a film. So you have the right amount of oil between the crankshaft and between the bearing, whether it's the rod or the main bearing. Both are going to have different clearances, but those have to be very, very precise and correct. And a lot of different engine manufacturers have different clearances. The Ferrari engine is all aluminum. Even the shells where the bearing shells go in, it's not a cast iron piece on the bottom or on top or a liner or anything like that. It's all aluminum. Aluminum has different expansion rates, and it might be almost zero clearance when it's cold. When it warms up, the aluminum will expand a little bit. It's going to change. But yeah, going back in the day, old Formula One cars, they were so tight you couldn't even turn the engine over until it got warmed up. So they would actually warm the engine oil up and circulate it through the block and heat the block up to get it up to operating temperature to where the clearances were correct before they can start it up. Pretty crazy stuff. But that's the kind of precision we're talking about in some motorsports, and we're trying to emulate that with this car. We want everything to be perfect. So that's all moving along. We have the bearings now. We have all these things. We have our pistons. We have everything, right? Except we ran into a problem. The problem is that the factory Ferrari cylinders are steel, which is awesome. They're not aluminum. So it's an aluminum block with steel sleeves that slide in, and they have a bunch of O-rings around it. I think 3 or 4, maybe even 5 per cylinder to seal from the oil, and then water passages to cool the cylinders. But the issue is that those cylinders have this crazy hard coating. I don't remember what it's called. I'll have to ask Michael from D-Sport next time I go over there what that coating was called. But that coating is nearly impossible to get off. They had to buy a diamond cutter to be able to cut through the coating because we went 1/4 millimeter bigger than factory for our new pistons. But that's where we ran into another problem. Well, that coating is about 0.3, 0.28 millimeters thick. So now that they've machined it out to the correct size for the pistons that we got, well, there's so little coating left that they're worried that it's going to flake off, and basically that coating's super hard. It's like a little razor blade. So those little pieces of metal that would be going through the oil system, if they did come apart, would destroy the bearings and destroy the engine. That's not going to work. So we're going to have to take that material completely off. We looked at some other options. We looked at making new cylinder sleeves, but the time frame was just too long. We were getting like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And I was a little bit worried about it too, because that material is going to be different than the Ferrari material. So different expansion rates, and being that it's a slip-in cylinder, not a press-in cylinder, which is, machined and then you force that sleeve into it and then you bore it after. This has to be precise, because if that sleeve expands a little differently or doesn't expand as much, now we might have coolant bypassing the O-rings and going into the oil, or oil getting in. We could just run into a lot of other issues. So our solution is to machine the cylinders out 1/2 millimeter instead of 1/4 millimeter, and have CP make us another set of custom pistons. But it turns out that that's going to be the fastest way to get this done. We should have those in a couple weeks, and it's actually very surprising. It's going to be the cheapest way to go. Making another set of 12 pistons is going to be cheaper than trying to buy a set of custom sleeves, and a few $1,000s more. Obviously it's a few $1,000s, but taking the chance of that coating starting to come off with the current pistons that we have, being that Ferrari original coating isn't completely gone, I just didn't want to take that chance. So a little bit of a delay, but not huge. Luckily CP was really willing to help us, put in a rush order, and they're gonna have those ready for us in a couple weeks. So that gets me back to why we're working on what we are working on currently. Rather than focusing on the rest of the car, the radiator in the back, the fuel cell, all that stuff, I really want to focus on everything here in the engine compartment, because in about 2 weeks, or maybe even a little less, we're gonna have to pull the engine out of the car to send it back to D-Sport. So I want to get all the stuff under the hood done, which means all the plumbing for the turbos. Obviously the exhaust system stuff is already done, but oil lines, main oil lines for the cooler, all the water lines that are up front, and the fuel lines that are up front. So that's what I'm gonna work on now. The Mad Sweden intake manifold is a work of art, and our fuel rails are inside of the V, which is not the normal spot. They would usually be on the outside over here. But to get the manifold built the way we wanted to get it to the height, to get the 2 throttle bodies, this is how it worked out. Also to get the injectors in at the right angle. So you can see the injector ports there, and they're actually in an angle that is very close to the angle that the air goes into the head. So being that direction is going to help with the fuel spray. So you get, coming out of the injector, you get this fuel spray, and it's a really nice, clean spray. If you have it hit the side of the head on the intake port, it's going to kind of gather up and drip down the wall rather than being in a nice mist. That mist is what is going to burn fast and efficiently and consistently, instead of it spraying on the side and dripping down, where one combustion cycle you might have too much fuel, the next one you might have a little bit less fuel, so you're going to have some inconsistencies, and the burn rate inside the cylinder is not going to be the same every single time. So you might have your lambda, your O2 sensor readings, which is seeing how much unburnt fuel there is coming out of the exhaust. That's going to change, it's going to fluctuate a lot. So hopefully with the injectors in this spot, it'll be as consistent, and the engine will run as smooth as possible, and also as safely as possible, having the right amount of fuel going into the cylinder every single time. So to get all the fuel system plumbed up properly, and obviously I want it to look really clean because I want it to be perfect. So there's a bunch of different angles of fittings that you can buy. So these ones are 60 degree, these ones are 45 degree, these are 90s, and I think these are 120s. I figured that the best one on the back of the manifold, where the fuel pressure regulator is going to go onto the firewall. Actually, I'll show you guys right now. It's going to be tight, but I also want that symmetry in the engine compartment. So right now, everything is basically mirrored from left to right. Everything looks really similar. Obviously, we have the dry sump oil tank on that side and not on this side, but there are going to be some things that just don't have, you know, a partner on the other side. But the regulator is going to go in the middle, and it's going to go behind the intake manifold, which is a pretty tight squeeze back here. And get it in place. There's also the brake line, the front brake line T that's down there, but it's going to go right here. So right in the middle, and then these fittings are going to point somewhere around there, and then the fuel line is going to run next to the manifold on the side over to the front. So the fuel rails being the full length here, front to back. On the back, that's where we're going to have the fuel come in, and then it's going to pass through the rails, past all the injectors, then it's going to come out and basically swoop around the sides, come over here, and go into the fuel pressure regulator. So inside of here we've got a spring and like a silicone diaphragm. So the spring pressure holds down until a certain amount of fuel pressure. We've also got a port here to add boost to it. So this is a boost dependent pressure regulator. For every pound of boost we run, it's going to increase the fuel pressure by 1 psi. So if we have 45 psi static, basically with no vacuum or no boost, and we have 20 pounds of boost, our fuel pressure at 20 pounds of boost will be 65 psi. And the reason you want the fuel pressure to raise with the boost is because you have pressure inside of the intake manifold. So if you have 30 pounds of boost and 45 pounds of fuel pressure, that fuel coming out of the injector is going to have to basically try to pass through 30 psi of pressure, and it's going to come out basically at 15 psi. So we want to hold the fuel pressure steady in the engine to have the right amount of fuel go in. To do that, you need a boost dependent fuel pressure regulator that's going to rise 1-to-1. So that's where we're using that. Back to the fittings. I played with some fittings, I played with some routing, and we just got these in that are the 120 degree. I had some 90s on there. that just didn't look right. So hopefully I got it right with the 120s. And it's gonna be a bit hard to see, but once we get that on there, I think that looks really good. So there's like just enough room in here for the fuel line to pass in between the manifold and the valve cover, to basically come through that spot right there and be really clean. And I obviously want to keep it tight to the intake manifold, so I'll probably even make some little standoffs off of the valve cover here that raise it up a bit, and allow me to run like a clamp to hold the fuel line there, so I can have that fuel line nice and straight right at the edge of the intake manifold, in between the valve cover, kind of floating there on those clamps, to where it just looks like a black tube. I don't want that hose to be flopping down. I don't want it to stick out. I want it to stay as tight to the manifold as possible to keep it away from all the heat. We're also going to make a heat shield that's going to bolt to the valve cover. There's some nice spots on the valve cover already for that, so we'll have a shield that comes up and blocks a lot of the heat from the intake, from the coils, from all the electronics in the middle of the engine. But now that we've got the lines, I'm going to start assembling those so we can get those lines made. Then we'll pop the intake manifold off. It's not bolted down. We just pop it off, and then I can mount the fuel pressure regulator back there, get all those lines sorted, and then see what's next on the list for the engine department. I cut a piece of line that's probably about 3, 4, 5, maybe inches too long. It's just a whole lot easier to work with than having that 20-foot long piece of hose in the car. They are going to be mirrored, so once I get the length of one side, I can just copy it to the other side. And this is a PTFE hose, which is Teflon. So you can see there that it's not rubber, it's actually like that white plastic, that Teflon. That's going to be compatible with basically any type of fuel. So we're going to run ethanol in this car. We're going to run the Ignite ethanol that I ran in my cars in FD. It's a really good fuel, and I haven't had issues. I've run normal lines on my car, but I always change them out just as like a maintenance thing. Every season I would change the lines, running regular rubber lines. So this should last for a very, very long time, being Teflon. So we're gonna run that. It's a little bit more expensive, but like I said, this is an expensive car. So we're not gonna skimp out on little things. All right, now I'm going to assemble these lines. And they're a little bit different than a regular Aeon line because they are Teflon. So they got this little like acorn thing here that goes in between. You got to put this sleeve on first, then open up the line a little bit, which is steel braided in there. It's got like a fabric on the outside, but there's actual steel fibers. Then put this on, put a little bit of oil on there, and then this fitting goes in and it all screws together and clamps it in place nice and tight. All right, so we've got our first part on. They've actually got some sort of like I don't know, it's exactly like a plastic or something that holds everything together. It's hard to get off, but it actually does work really well because it allows you to pass this on really easily. We just use masking tape. This is a rough cut, so we did get some fraying, and you can see like how those steel fibers are hanging out the side. I do not like assembling steel braided lines. You seem to always get poked, and you're always like, saying ow when you're putting these things together, but they worked well. And I like that these have the fiber on the outside, so they're not abrasive, because the regular like steel braided outside, if it rubs against anything, it's just cutting through, whether it's paint, whether it's rubber, whether it's hoses, whether it's a battery cable, it will just kind of chew through it. So this is nice. It's nice on the hands, but it's also nice in the car. If it touches anything, it's not going to rub a hole or rub the paint dry. Just open that up a little bit. Get that started. And just kind of like tap it down on there. There we go. So we got it all the way up to the step where it should be. Now I can put a little oil on this, get this thing installed in there, put it in the vise, screw it together. All right, just like that. I know some people really like to use aluminum adjustable wrenches or for the AN wrenches to assemble the lines. But I've really found that a good adjustable wrench works really well. Doesn't leave any scratches because you can adjust it really well and get it nice and tight on there, as long as you're not like cranking on it sideways, or if it's a little loose, obviously it's going to leave some scratches and some marring. But yeah, this is really quick, it's easy, and it's worked well for me. Obviously we've got this like vice block thing too, which has all the shapes for the line to be held in place without it being on that rough vise that's just going to dig in there and leave those marks on it. But yeah, that looks good. We'll assemble the regulator, we'll get it in place, figure out the length, put the other fitting on, and then we will clean the lines up, because when you cut them with a cutoff wheel, an abrasive cutoff wheel, so it's gonna leave some dirt and pieces of metal and stuff in there. Obviously stuff we do not want in the oil system or fuel system, so once we get it assembled, we'll clean them all out. I pulled the intake manifold off because I want to mount that fuel pressure regulator before I do the fuel line and say that it's perfect, because if it's a little twisted or a little bit further forward or a little bit further back, the line's not going to be the exact right length, so we're going to mount it first. So we pulled the intake manifold off, we drew the parts or where we need to drill the holes. I got an automatic center punch, so this thing's spring loaded inside. You just push down on it and it'll act like you're tapping with a hammer. So these things are really, really useful for doing it with one hand in an odd position like this. But I'll just line it up with the center of that hole. Now we have a nice center to get our drill bit started on there. All right, time to drill it out. Holes are drilled out and Tim is getting ready to put the nutserts in there. See a little action from the backside here. I don't know if I caught that. We'll have to get the other one when you put the other one in.
That's good.
But yeah, that looks good. So that thing is flared out as it should be, and that will hold the bolts in place. And these ones are also knurled, which means they have those little grooves on them that keep this thing from rotating. So that is that's a big help, because if you have these that are smooth and you put them in, tighten them down, or you go to loosen them and they actually spin, and that is a total pain. Here's the other one, Tim. We got this really cool nutsert tool here from I think it was from Matco, right?
Yeah. It makes it so much easier than, especially the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Because the bigger ones are like, you really have to crank down on them too.
Yeah, so there's another type of tool where you just use like what looks like a standard rivet gun, like, you know, just grab it and you squeeze it, but that just kills your hands to do anything bigger than like a 6mm or 1/4 inch. Like, that's about all you can do by hand. Once you get to the 8mm and 10mm, man, it is it's brutal. Like, after doing 2 of those by hand, you will probably want to go home for the rest of the day and rest your hands in some ice water, because it kills you. But all right, let's see the next one, Tim. All right,
tell me when you're ready.
It's in the hole, and it's in a good spot here so we can really see what's going on. All right, go ahead, tighten it down. There we go. Got that flare action. That's looking good. Back the tool out.
Done.
Boom. Now we are ready to mount our fuel pressure regulator right over there.
Is it in there?
It's in. Looks like it is, yeah, it's in the right spot. So on the bottom, this fitting will clear that bulkhead T for the brake line. So brake lines are going to come off each side and go to both the corners. This -6 on the bottom will come straight down and go back, and that's the return line. So that'll just dump back into the fuel cell. And then this is where we're working on the line right now. So I'll connect this line and it's going to come out and go forward. So I'll put that line on real quick, and then I'll drop the intake manifold back on it, and we can figure out the length of the line so we can cut it and finish assembling that. So we got the line cut and assembled, and it looks exactly how I wanted it to. It fits pretty much spot on. If I let it go, it's going to pop out, but I will get some clamps in there when we go to assemble it for the final time that will hold it in place like that. So it'll almost be invisible. You won't even see it. Nice and stealth, nice and clean, like everything else will be under the hood of this car, including the wiring. Everything is gonna look like it's tucked and really minimalist. So I really want the fab work to stand out and not just hoses and lines and plumbing and all that. I want that to be kind of hidden. So that looks good. I'm gonna copy that over to the other side now since they are mirrored. I'm just gonna pull that line off and make the other one the exact same length. And that will finish that portion of the fuel line, or the fuel system up. The fuel line's under here. I still do have to make the other ones that go from the back of the rail to underneath the car, but that's all on the chassis side, not on the engine side. So like I said, my focus is really getting everything in the engine compartment done. So after we get those lines done, I'm gonna start looking at the turbo oil feed lines and also the turbo water lines. We got the other fuel line done. They're not installed because we don't need them on the car right now, but both of those are ready to go when we're ready for it. But we did get the plate put onto the engine. It's just stuck on there with a couple bolts to line it up. So we can make this last line here. I'm gonna take these off so I can get an accurate measurement, because the line actually sits up against there. So it'll push on and connect, but I wanna make sure that I get the line the right length. So I'm gonna measure from there to there. Also, I'm gonna pull this back a little bit because it could go forward and then it just gets closer to the exhaust. So I want it to kind of be in that area, pulled back a bit. And these lines will also get some of that heat protection hose over it. So when we're all done with the lines, then we'll slide that like silicone fiberglass heat protection stuff on top of it. And that'll keep these, this exhaust here from just roasting that line. That line is also the PTFE line with the steel braided, with that nylon coating on the outside. So it is really strong. And I think that Teflon is basically good for 600 degrees. Oil temp's gonna be like 250, so plenty high for the oil temp. And if it does get hot from the exhaust, it should be okay also. But like I said, we'll put that heat protection film in place just to make sure it lasts a long time. And it is done. So the oil return for the turbos, all those lines are good to go now. And I think I'm gonna do one more line today. I was looking at the turbo lines and I think I know how I want those to run. Probably 120 degree down here and kind of line up with this with another T, and then it's gonna go back because on the back of the block, underneath the intake manifold, is the basically the port for the oil pressure sensor, which is also where we're going to get that oil from to feed the turbos. Since this car didn't come turboed from the factory, it doesn't have like a standalone port for that to come out of. Doesn't matter, we can use that one and it'll be completely fine. So I'm just going to measure that up, and that line I might actually have made at a local line supply place. So they'll do all the crimp fittings and everything and make a nice compact line with the right angles and bends. And then I need to figure out the water lines. The water lines are going to be a bit trickier. Same thing, because this car did not come turbocharged. It doesn't have anywhere on the block for water to go in and out for the turbos. So I'm probably going to have to weld on something onto the front cover and something by where the water pump is down there to get some water to the turbos, to have water circulate in the turbos. That's especially important in these because they are aluminum center housing. These are the EFR Supercore turbos. So instead of a cast iron center, they're aluminum. They're about 7 pounds lighter each because of that. But because they're aluminum, they're a little bit more sensitive to heat. Obviously the turbos get super hot, so we really need to make sure they stay cool. If this was a road race car, no matter what, we would run water to them. But on a drift car, if it has a cast iron center, you usually don't have to run water to it because the runs are pretty short. They cool down fairly fast in between. But being that this is a Gymkhana car, it might be run for a bit longer. Who knows how Damon's gonna drive this car. He's gonna drive the wheels off it, for sure. That's something we're gonna have to make sure is everything stays cool. So that's just one other thing that needs to get plumbed in. Still have to figure that out. I wanna make sure it looks clean. It's gonna be kind of tricky to do. If I come from the side over here, and go down, the water line's gonna have to go kind of low, and it's gonna get pretty close down here to the exhaust manifold. Obviously we can put some heat shielding on it. That might be the way to go. But I'm gonna see what kind of fittings are available, because if we just screw in like a -6 onto here and it's sticking out, well, that fitting's not gonna look right. We can try to run a banjo fitting, or I might even make some. Get a banjo and make my own steel line that comes off and wraps around real tight and then goes to an AN fitting somewhere else. So not sure exactly what we're gonna do there yet, but that's something that I can actually do without the engine being in the car, because the turbos themselves mount to the chassis. So we've got these braces here, so I can always mock up those after, figure out all the fittings on the turbo, and then all I have to do is just run the lines later. But here's the last line I'm gonna work on today, and this is the other oil cooler line. So we looked underneath the car earlier. That's the one that's going into that factory aluminum tube that goes to the oil pump. This is the one that's going to go to the dry sump tank. So I will route it the way it needs to get routed, plug it in here, bring it over there, same thing, measure the length, cut it, and assemble this line. This one does assemble differently, so I'll show you guys how this one goes together. This line is, I think it's called Ultra Pro. So it's a Earl's line, and it is a same thing, Teflon liner, but this one doesn't have any steel braid in it. So it's super light. It's also really, really easy to cut and assemble. All I have to do is use a razor blade, and you can just cut through it. That's it. Clean cut, super easy. It's just really expensive, but I wanted to use this line on the oil lines to give it the flexibility, because it doesn't kink, and it's really flexible, so we can get around everything that we need to get around easily without having the line kind of like bind up or get in our way, because I'm assembling all these lines and doing all this stuff, but I still have to move the steering rack. So the steering rack right now, its position is way off for where it needs to be for the angle kit that we made. Basically it is too high, and it's also too far forward, so the tie rod angles are way wrong, and that is just not going to work. There's a lot of geometry that goes on with the steering rack being in the right location, as far as how much angle the car is actually going to have, but also the angle between the two wheels. So we want it to stay fairly parallel on a car like this, on a drift car. On a street car or a road race car, you're going to have different Ackerman, and Ackerman is just the amount of difference between the outside wheel and the inside wheel, because basically there's two radiuses that the car is traveling on because of the width of the wheelbase. So when you're making a U-turn in a parking lot, you crank the wheel over, or you park your car, you'll see the inside wheel has a lot more angle than the outside wheel. And actually just moving the steering rack will change the amount of Ackerman, but also as it goes through its sweep, it might go like this and go positive and then come back negative. So that steering rack really needs to be in the right place. We could do spacers and offset it and basically bolt something on here that moves the tie rod to a different point. That is one way to do it. That's the easiest way to do it, but there's a lot of downsides to it. It puts a lot of load on the steering rack sideways. Rather than it just being in and out, it's going to try to twist the rack, and it's also going to try to bind the rack forward and backward. So it's going to kill the rack seals really fast. This is still a Ferrari rack. They're very expensive, and we don't want to be buying steering racks all the time. It's also kind of a pain to get to change it out. So to eliminate all that, we're going to chop all of this off of the chassis. I'm going to leave that front part there. I'm going to use that as a guide, so I'll actually make a plate that comes back and holds the new mounting point. We'll make that out of aluminum. It'll get all welded up and triangulated, and we'll show you that process later on. That'll also happen when the engine's out. It's a lot easier to do. But all that being said, I want to make sure that these lines are able to move and pass by stuff. So we went with these lines. This is all ready to go now, so I just need to
assemble this, bolt it together, and then same thing, clean it out. This one goes together a bit different. It's actually got like a screw, and the material inside here is kind of like a, yeah, it basically looks like a spring. It's a coil. So we'll put this together. It kind of goes on the same way, but this one just screws on and then it clamps together. So really easy to assemble these lines. And there's no steel braid to poke your fingers. All right, that's it for today. We got that last oil line done. That's all plumbed up. Now I'm gonna go through some of the fittings and just kind of search online to see what my options are, so I can figure out the rest of the turbo water plumbing and all the other little things that I need to get done. If you guys like this content, let us know in the comments below. I know we just posted the video of my AMG on the Stories channel. It was an hour long. It seemed like you guys liked it. So if you guys like this stuff, going more into detail on what we're doing on the cars, how we're doing it, the process, let me know and we'll do more of it, because it's not that big of a deal for us. We're here, we're working on it, we're doing it. Tim's holding the phone right now. We're making stories happen. So it's obviously not gonna happen every single day, because we've got a lot of stuff that we've got to get done as well, and filming does take time. But you know, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, a stories video with a lot of just in the shop content, working on the car. Let me know. See you guys later.